have completed in this lesson origin of the earth and its geological ages, human enquiries, human evolution and prehistoric culture, lower Paleolithic and middle Paleolithic culture. Now let us look into the upper Paleolithic culture. Upper Paleolithic culture. Paleolithic means Stone Age, Old Stone Age. The cultural phase that succeeded the Middle Paleolithic is called Upper Paleolithic culture. This period is marked by innovation in tool technology, which means man used innovative tools. Long blades and burins were used by him. Burin is the stone-made chisel with sharp edge. So it will be like this. They have used a stone-made chisel, but this is made up of iron. They used this kind of chisel with sharp cutting edge. These people used more silica content raw materials, which means silica contained stones were used by these people. They have drawn many paintings also, and they made many art objects. They are called artifacts. This artifacts shows that their cognitive skill and their language. These people also used microliths. Lith means stone. So, small stones were also used as weapons. The modern humans who appeared first were sub-Sahara Africa people. They appeared around 3 lakhs years ago. These people started moving the various parts of Asia around 60,000 years ago. They replaced the earlier population. The people, those who lived in Europe, called as Cro-Magnon. Horns and ivory were used for preparing tools and art objects. With this, they prepared bone needles, fish hooks, harpoons, and spears. During this period, man wore dresses and he ate cooked food. The dead bodies were placed in burials with folded hands placed in the chest, placed over the chest. Pendants and carved tools were also seen in this period. The carved tools were richly carved. Apart from that, evidences like drawings, or paintings. Then clay model sculptures. And carvings. Also available. The image of goddess Venus made of stones and bones were found in Europe and in some parts of Asia.
The Paleolithic age was the longest part of the Stone Age. It can be further divided into three periods: lower, middle, and upper. The names of these periods are based on the depths at which remains belonging to these periods have been found. Paleolithic man lived in caves and rock shelters. He was a nomad who wandered from place to place in search of food. He did not know how to produce food. He survived by hunting wild animals and birds, fishing and gathering wild plants, berries, nuts, roots and tubers. Hence, he is called the hunter-gatherer. Paleolithic man realized the advantages of living in groups. It enabled him to hunt large animals and to share food which was scarce and decayed easily. It also provided security against natural dangers. Groups were not very large. There were no inequalities, nor were there any family ties within the group. Average lifespan was only 20 to 25 years. Finished and unfinished Paleolithic artifacts have been found at several sites where raw materials for making such artifacts are also found in plenty. These were probably factory sites where artifacts were made on a large scale. At some sites, ash and animal remains have been found along with artifacts. This suggests that people worked and also lived at these sites. These were habitation cum factory sites. Paleolithic tools were usually made by chipping stones. Stone tools were of two kinds. Core tools were made by chipping off pieces from chunks of rocks or hand-sized pebbles. The stone left after chipping is called core. Core tools were usually oval or pear-shaped. They were mostly used as hand axes for heavy work like cutting trees, digging the earth for roots and tubers, and breaking mounds. Some were used as cleavers for cutting large pieces of meat. Flake tools were made from the sharp pieces or flakes that broke off while shaping core tools. These were useful for chopping meat and skinning animals. Remains of ash at some Paleolithic sites led to the conclusion that fire was known to Paleolithic man. Paleolithic remains have been found at many places in the Deccan such as Pune, Nasik and Chirki Nivasa in Maharashtra, Hunsgi in Karnataka and Kurnool in Andhra Pradesh.
Mesolithic culture. Mesolithic culture means Middle Stone Age. This period is between Paleolithic culture and the Neolithic culture. During this period, the people used microliths, which means small stones objects. Then they were the hunter-gatherers, which means hunting was their main occupation. This period, with the global warming occurring after the Ice Age, people started moving everywhere and they started settling in the various ecozones. Ice Age means the period before 8,000 years ago. BC years ago. During this period, many parts of the world was covered with ice sheets and snow. Mesolithic culture people were good at microlithic artifacts that were less than 5 centimeter. These tools were they used points, spears and arrowheads. They also used geometry tools like lunettes, triangles and trapeces. These kind of tools were also used by them. These tools were hafted with wooden and bones. Hafted means making handle for the tools.
During this period, the climate of the world was getting warmer, which led to an increase in the variety of plants and animals. Hunting and gathering food became easier and human survival rate increased. Mesolithic people learned to hunt in groups and to fish. They also learned to domesticate plants and animals. Dog was the first animal to be domesticated. Later, they started domesticating sheep, goat, and cattle. Gradually, they became herders and farmers. They started growing crops like barley and wheat. Man's main occupation remained hunting and gathering food, but his tools improved gradually. Stone tools were now made from microliths, tiny chips of stone blades. They were then stuck onto handles and bones or wood to make saws, axes, harpoons, and fish hooks. Fishing became popular and fish became an important food item. The bow and the arrow were invented during the Mesolithic era. Most of them lived in rock shelters and caves. They moved seasonally following animal movements and plant changes. In many places, settled communities were found near coasts and in river valleys. Houses varied from round to rectangular and were built on wooden posts around a central hearth. In India, Mesolithic remains have been found in Mysore and parts of western and central India. Mesolithic people painted pebbles, stone beads, pierced shells and teeth. Small sculptures carved from stone and clay have also been found. Red and white were the main colors, which were made from rocks and naturally available material. The paintings tell us about the various activities of the Mesolithic people. The first clay pottery was used as food storage. Many Mesolithic burials have been excavated in central India. They believed that the dead needed food in the next life and thus buried the dead with microliths, animal bones, jewelry, and food. The Mesolithic age, which lasted from 10,000 to 8,000 BC, transformed the hunter-gatherer to a farmer.
Neolithic culture and the beginning of agriculture. The culture that succeeded the Mesolithic culture is called Neolithic culture. We can say even Neolithic also we consider. During this period, agriculture and domestication of animals came into being. So, this is important phase in the history. In this period only, agriculture and domestication came into being, no? We got evidences for this in the areas of present fertile region, that is Mesopotamia and Egypt. Which is Egypt to Mesopotamia. It seems to be like this region which contains Israel, Iran, Iraq, those areas nowadays. And this region, we got the evidences of farming. It is believed we got that first cultivation came into being this region. Then it is also in the Indus region, Gangetic Valley and China. By around 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC, this agriculture came into being. The crops which were cultivated were wheat, barley and peas around 10,000 BC. By 4,000 BC, the fruit trees were also cultivated like olives, figs, dates, pomegranates and grapes. Neolithic culture is called as New Age because during this period, the people started using grinding and polishing the stones. They used flaked tools and they made the hard stones into smooth one. And they use a flaking method also. With that, they make it as a sharp. Then, before that Neolithic culture, in the Mesolithic culture people, they were hunters and gatherers. So, they used to hunt and gather food. It was limited. So, large number of people cannot survive in a same area. So that these people were limited in the Mesolithic culture. But in Neolithic culture, they started agriculture. So, large people can live in an area. The introduction of agriculture and domestication of animals led to the more productions, which means during this period, the people with the help of water and extra minerals which they got the soil from the soil led to the abundant production. So, more supply of food grains and food for animals were also more. For this cultivation, people need fertile land. So, river banks are the very good place for the cultivation because river banks are more fertile plus it provides water for the agriculture. So, these Neolithic culture people started settling on the banks of the rivers. In this way, they started settling life. Once they produced more food products, they created permanent settlement like villages and the community living also started. Because now they no need to move for the food. So in this way, Neolithic culture became a settled life. From that, man started to innovate many things. Once man settled in the Neolithic only led to the innovation of wheel. From the wheel, all kind of innovation developed. So, this Neolithic period is an important one in the history because during this period only a great development occurred.
The beginning of agriculture and living in a community was the most important development of this period, but hunting continued to be the main livelihood. In the Neolithic age, man turned from a food gatherer into a food producer. He moved into larger settlements, cultivated fields, grew crops, and lived a settled life. Remains of animal bones and shelters found at Neolithic sites suggested that they tamed, bred, and raised animals, especially those animals which were mild-natured. Thus, domesticated animals gradually became different from wild animals. Over the years, man learned to select, preserve, and sow good quality seeds. Thus, domesticated plants became different from wild varieties of the same types. Growing crops assured man of continuous supply of food. Rearing of animals assured man of a continuous supply of meat, milk, and hides. In order to take care of his crops, man needed to stay at one place for a long time. Hence, permanent settlements began to be established and community life began to take shape. Neolithic man used harder stones to make tools and polished the blades to make them sharper according to his needs. They also made spindles and bone needles. For keeping the food grains for a longer period, they started making baskets out of wild grass and applied clay around it. Later, they started making clay vessels also. They even dug pits into the ground to store food. The most remarkable invention of Neolithic man was the wheel. It helped them to improve transport. Potter's wheel improved the process of making pots. A village life consisted of a few closely built houses surrounded by a common fence of prickly bush or mud wall. The concept of families came into being in this age, and a group of families living and sharing together customs, beliefs, and practices was called a tribe. The people carried out activities like farming, herding, gathering, fishing in groups. The tribe jointly owned natural wealth such as land, forests, water resources, etc. There was no inequality. Men had occupations such as hunting, plowing, grazing herds of animals. Women took care of home and children and light agricultural tasks. Both men and women took part in pot making, weaving, and making tools, weapons, and ornaments. They worshipped water, fire, rain, and thunder, as also the sun, the earth, and the stars. They worshipped the cow in thankfulness for the bounty it provided, and the snake in fear. They buried their dead, sometimes in urns too, along with objects they would use during their lifetime. It showed that they believed in life after death. Cremation was also practiced. They often marked the burial places with huge rectangular blocks of stone called megaliths.
Due to more development in the Neolithic culture, this is called Neolithic Revolution. Revolution means maybe it is inside a system, a political change, or it is also considered a social system was completely changed. So here is also man was a nomadic life. He led a nomadic life, but now he started a settled life. So the social change was complete change was happened during the Neolithic period. So we are considering this period as a Neolithic revolution.
Well, somewhere around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, humans were living all over the globe in small, loosely organized groups of hunter-gatherers. These groups moved around a lot, hunting whatever animals they could find and using available plants for food. Life as a hunter-gatherer was hard. You had to follow flocks where they drifted and pick up and move when the resources of one area were exhausted. Eventually, people in the Middle East, Africa, and Western Asia began to settle down into agricultural villages. Agriculture is the process of modifying the environment in order to use it more effectively. These villages formed when people began to domesticate plants and animals. By domestication, we mean to make something useful to humans. That can include anything, from roping livestock, to taming a dog, to selectively breeding vegetables, to make them bigger and more nutritious. So, with their domesticated plants and animals, villagers had a steady source of food. Animals could also be used to work on the land, as well as supply leather, furs, and fertilizer. According to the experts, they consider that the very first place where humans contributed in farming was something called the Fertile Crescent. This area of what is now northern Africa and the Middle East had fertile soil, gentle rains, and long springs and summers, all of which made it an ideal spot for farming. The agricultural life wasn't easy at first. People didn't have the stress of moving around constantly, but they became more vulnerable to elements like weather, and their diets suffered from lack of variety. Early villagers could only grow limited types of food. The people tended to be smaller and less healthy than hunter-gatherer populations. Then, there are the issues of waste and disease. When large populations start to settle down together, they produce a lot of trash. And when so many people live close together, diseases spread easily. It's true, agriculture doesn't seem like such a great development at first, but our lives would be really different if our ancestors had never settled down. Today, we can look back on the first agricultural revolution, which is also called the Neolithic Revolution, as a turning point in the history of the world.
Automate the manual process of molecular diagnostic test. Pune-based molecular biology company MyLab Discovery Solutions Private Limited launched a cartridge-based machine which is called Compact Excel. This is fully automated. With this machine, we can diagnose the molecule. So, for diagnosing the RNA, DNA, plasma, tissue, etc., no need the human being. Manual power is no need. It is more helpful to diagnose the COVID-19 and molecular diagnostics. With this, we call it a day. Thank you.